What If Ron Was in Hufflepuff, Part 9. Hey, brother! And after a brief hiatus, welcome back to Ron in Hufflepuff. We didn't forget you guys. We just got really busy and then exhausted, and then this is like a massive endeavor, and we're really excited about doing it, but want to make sure we do it justice, so you know how it goes. When we last left our heroes, though, things were getting tense. Voldemort's return is severely hampered by the Ministry accepting that he's back right away, and thus his numbers are like way down from usual. He has a total of 4 Death Eaters and like an angry Draco Malfoy? Dumbledore has also had a head start on the Horcruxes and successfully tracked down the ring, which he brought back to Harry and Ron to show the boys how to destroy it, but got distracted when Ron pointed out the sign of the Deathly Hallows on it. And in a moment of weakness, Dumbledore put the ring on, forcing the boys to act. Harry destroyed the ring with the Sword of Gryffindor, and Ron pulled Hufflepuff's cup out of the sorting hat, which filled itself to the brim with phoenix tears, purging the Horcrux from the cup and healing Dumbledore's cursed hand. So this leaves us with the locket, diadem, Nagini, and piece of soul in Harry left to be destroyed. Meanwhile, in addition to not having many remaining followers, Voldemort has no idea the others have been hunting Horcruxes and didn't use Harry's blood to return, so he still can't touch him. Plus, thanks to the Phoenix Tears, Dumbledore is in his usual health. How old is Dumbledore anyway? 150? It would appear that the Dark Lord is running thin on options, while Harry, Ron, and Dumbledore are only building momentum. So without any further ado, let's continue on the winding path that explores the question, what if Ron was in Hufflepuff? Guys, don't forget that Through the Griffin Door is going back on tour, this time to the Southeast in the month of February. Be sure to come and check it out. And as a reminder, if we sell out that Jacksonville show, then we will go and do the Hot Wings Challenge right there in person with you all. Links in the description down below. So still in Dumbledore's office, Harry, Ron, and Dumbledore look at Voldemort's treasure on the desk before them. Hufflepuff's cup and the gaunt ring with its now huge crack right through the center from where Harry struck it with the Sword of Gryffindor. A rather productive evening indeed, smiled Dumbledore from behind his half-moon spectacles. I think it is time, if not for your sakes, but my own, for us all to get some sleep. So the following morning, Harry ran into Ron at the front of the Great Hall before walking into breakfast. They exchanged a heartfelt grin before heading to their respective house tables. When the usual flurry of owls signified the morning post had arrived, hundreds of owls swooped down to drop letters and packages to students. Within moments, a murmur seemed to fill the Great Hall as students who received the Daily Prophet were sharing a piece of front-page news with each other. Harry leaned over and caught a glimpse of the headline. Break-in at Gringotts. According to the Goblins of Gringotts, a break-in took place late last night. Although there was no visible signs of any intruders having set off any of their safeguards, nor does it appear that the vault itself had been opened. However, the vault in question belonged to a Death Eater currently being housed in Azkaban prison. Harry's head spun looking for Ron and saw him looking back at him. With a nod, the two exited the Great Hall to an abandoned corridor. Did you see? Harry, it has to be the cup. It must have been. But at that moment, Harry felt a huge surge of pain in his scar and doubled over. Voldemort was furious, as angry as Harry had ever felt. His mind was racing. Surely, if the boy had destroyed any of his Horcruxes, he, Lord Voldemort, would have known, would have felt it. He, the greatest wizard of them all. He, the most powerful. The rest were safe. The other Horcruxes must be intact. But he must know. He must be sure. He paced the room, kicking aside the goblins' corpses as he passed, and the pictures blurred and burned in his boiling brain. The lake, the shack, and Hogwarts. In a cold sweat, Harry's eyes flew open. He stumbled to his knees on the cold castle floor. He knows. He knows we're hunting Horcruxes. A lake, the shack, and Hogwarts, Ron finished. Bewildered, Harry turned his head to see Ron was working to get back on his feet as well, a pale expression across his face. You saw it too, Harry said, staring at Ron in disbelief. Ron just nodded, though his hands were pressed hard against his eyes, as though hoping he could shake the visions from his memory. Your blood, said Harry. I wonder if when he took it. Just then, Colin Creevey appeared around the corner and gave a little whoop as he spotted Harry and Ron, who both turned away, hoping not to be seen. "Harry! Hey, Harry!" called Colin excitedly. Harry turned away, wanting nothing more than just a moment to think. "I've got a note for you, Harry!" And Harry spun on the spot as Colin practically skipped with joy towards him, holding a tightly rolled note. Harry thanked Colin and watched him as he did a heel click and turned a corner out of sight. "That kid's going to get himself killed one of these days," said Ron, staring off into the distance where Colin had just fled. "What's it say?" "It's Dumbledore. He's seen the paper. Needs us in his office right away." And, without a moment's hesitation, the two boys sped off toward the gargoyle that guarded the entrance to the headmaster's office. But y'all, we need to take a brief pause right there to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, BetterHelp. I remember when I was a kid and couldn't wait for the holidays, especially Christmas morning. There was nothing better than sitting at the top of the stairs waiting for Dad to make coffee and set up the video camera so that we could come racing down the stairs. Nowadays, I love the holidays for a completely different reason. It's a time when you can truly just slow down and just soak in a day spent with your favorite people. A day where you don't need to rush and can fall asleep on the couch because you got up so early. And while that kind of comfort is something that I spend the whole year anticipating, therapy can provide a comfort that lasts the whole year round. Because if you're anything like me, the cold months can start off with such a high, but once all the fun and excitement is over, you sort of fall into that seasonal dip. That's where therapy has taught me personally so many different techniques for dealing with this time of year and reminding me that you don't just need a once a year major holiday to take a moment to fall asleep on the couch. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try and find comfort this December. Visit betterhelp.com/super today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/super. Link is in the description down below. And came the calm voice of Dumbledore, who greeted the boys as they entered the office. They could see the open copy of the Daily Prophet on his desk. "I assume you have seen that we've been caught," said Dumbledore, with a small note of triumph in his voice. "Yes, we have, but Ron too, saw something else." Dumbledore listened calmly as the boys told him about the shack, lake, and Hogwarts Castle itself. And after a long pause, Dumbledore finally spoke. "And you both witnessed this vision?" asked Dumbledore calmly. Well, it says calmly, but he kicked both of their chairs across the room and, threw all of his silver instruments on the ground, and an inferno of fire emitted out of his ears. Well, none of that happened. The boys nodded, and Dumbledore's genial tone seemed to lessen. "Very well. If this break-in has tipped Voldemort off to Hufflepuff's cup being removed from a Gringotts vault, and we know why he witnessed the shack, we can only assume the other locations are further hiding spots for additional Horcruxes." "Do you know where the lake is then?" Ron asked, speaking up for the first time. Dumbledore's piercing blue eyes paused on Ron again. "I'm sure you'll recall my conversation with Mrs. Cole from the orphanage." The boys nodded. "She alluded to a location where the orphanage would take the children on holiday. I located the cave some time ago, but have not fully investigated it. But now it seems as though Voldemort has done the job for us. I was afraid that something like this might happen when I read the paper this morning. Gather your things, boys. We'll need to act fast." "Now," said Harry, surprised at Dumbledore's haste. "I think so," replied Dumbledore. "If I am not mistaken, you saw those locations because Voldemort is worried about the safety of his Horcruxes, something I'm certain he never would have believed he would need to do. I suspect he is already on his way to ensure the others remain untampered with." "So he doesn't know when we've destroyed one?" Ron asked. "Doesn't seem so. It wasn't until the news of the supposed break-in at Gringotts that he became worried, and it's been 12 hours since the two of you destroyed 2 of them." There was a faintest twitch in Dumbledore's mustache as he gestured to the cup and the ring. "If, however, he redoubles the protection around the remaining objects, I fear we will never reach them. If one is indeed at Hogwarts, I think we can assume it is safe enough. Voldemort cannot hope to penetrate the castle with so few followers. Therefore, we must procure the Horcrux from the cave as soon as possible." 10 minutes later, the boys returned to the office, ready to go. Harry had his invisibility cloak, and to their surprise, Dumbledore handed each of them the relics of their houses. "Just in case," he added, with a wink. From there, the trio headed to Hogsmeade, where they could apparate to the cave, and we kind of know the drill from here. Dumbledore inspects the entrance, cuts his own hand to open the door, and navigates towards the chain in the water where he pulls up the boat. Now, normally Dumbledore says the boat can only carry one person, but won't register Harry's power in comparison to his own. And not for nothing, but if that's the case, I doubt adding Ron to the equation will make a difference either, so they all sail across, taking terrible note of the Inferi below the surface. As they reach the island in the lake, both boys grasp their foreheads in terrible pain. "What has happened?" Dumbledore asks in alarm. He's Angry, Harry replies through gritted teeth. Really angry, Ron confirms. Dumbledore stands at once and makes his way to the basin, which as ever is full of the drink of despair, and Dumbledore tries everything he can think of to rid the basin of the potion before concluding that he will need to drink it. He conjures a goblet out of thin air and fills it to the brim. As the boys recover and make their way to the center, he instructs them that they will need to ensure he finishes the entire basin and, without warning, drains the goblet. Harry and Ron stare in disbelief that Dumbledore has acted so quickly, and then suddenly keels over in terrible pain. No! Dumbledore screams out in agony. Harry recovers first. He must have expected something like this. He told us he had to drink it all. Come on, he says, rushing to fill the goblet a second time. Before he does, though, Ron stops him and has an idea. Use this, he says, producing Hufflepuff's cup. Harry considers him for a moment and then smiles. No. You better do it, he says, letting Ron through, who fills the cup up to the brim. The cup becomes warm in Ron's hand before a bright white light flashes out of the cup, leaving a formerly green potion, a non-threatening clear, which Ron swiftly hands to Dumbledore and tips it down his throat. The effect is almost immediate. Water, he explains, admiring the cup. Excellent work, Mr. Weasley. I dare say this potion is no health drink. And so the process continues over and over until the basin is drained, and at the bottom a large locket appears and Harry reaches in to grab. But as he does so, the surface of the lake suddenly begins to bubble and erupt all around them. Harry, Ron, behind me, now! In the back of his head, Harry realized something was wrong, not just because the Inferi were emerging, but because it didn't make sense. Voldemort wouldn't have intended himself to be attacked just for collecting the locket. Dumbledore! Said a high, cold voice from above them. Harry and Ron looked up in horror as floating down out of the darkness was none other than Voldemort himself, only visible by the faint reflection of his pale skin amidst billowing black robes. He landed softly across the basin from Harry, Ron, and Dumbledore, looking livid, and as he did so, slimy gray arms and heads began surfacing all around the island, clawing their way onto land. Dumbledore wasted no time. Swirling on the spot with his wand raised above his head, he summoned a wall of fire that encircled the entire island, and Harry saw at once the Inferi spilled back into the water, although more arms still tried to claw their way through, recoiling at the flames. As Dumbledore's turn finished, he pointed his wand behind him at the boys, who were sent reeling back into the boat. Get out of here! He commanded. Both boys made to refuse and tried to clamber back to shore, but it was no good. The boat was speeding away through the turbulent water. I see you've done your homework, Dumbledore. I should have known. Well, much like yourself, I was quite the gifted student, Tom. Voldemort sneered at him. No matter, Dumbledore. A piece of my soul is a small price to pay for your life. Avada Kedavra! But Dumbledore was ready. The stone basin flew from its position to intercept the spell and shattered into rubble. Dumbledore had been waiting for it and sent the rubble flying at Voldemort, who was now on the defensive. He reacted just soon enough, and the rocks transformed into a fine dust just before reaching him. But in the moment he needed to react, Dumbledore had launched another attack, and from behind him a huge wave of water engulfed Voldemort and trapped him inside of a large floating sphere. Several Inferi had also been carried in the wave as well, and were now struggling inside of the orb alongside Voldemort. Impedimenta! Harry yelled as another body attempted to hoist itself into the boat. He and Ron had thus far been able to force off each new attacker with a variety of spells from their Triwizard Cup training. And with a soft crash, the boat collided with the opposite shore, and both boys leaped out, staring back at the infernos still circling the island in the middle of the lake. They could see a huge orb of water and hoped Dumbledore had conjured it. As they watched, the orb floated out over the swirling lake. Run! Shouted Ron, his wand held aloft and lighting the way forward. As the boys rushed towards the exit, however, they encountered a new problem. Now that they were on shore, the Inferi were exiting the water in much larger numbers ahead of them. A slimy arm reached out and grabbed Ron's wand arm. There was a slashing sound as Harry raced forward with the sword of Gryffindor and sliced clean through the Inferi's arm. Light the way, he told Ron as he dashed forward and sliced another body clean in half. Ron chased after him, wand held high, illuminating the way ahead. Meanwhile, on the island, Dumbledore was forcing the orb of water over the lake. He was on the precipice of lowering it beneath the surface when a hand grasped around his ankle. The wave that he'd used to conjure the orb had doused a small portion of the protective flames, and a small stream of Inferi had clawed their way onto the island. With his focus broken, the orb exploded in every direction, and Voldemort fell towards the surface of the lake. He thrust his wand downward, and the water parted around him as he fell, so he landed on the damp, rocky bottom of the lake. In an instant, he shot forth, arcing high over the ring of flames. The scene seemed to slow down. Several Inferi had managed to grab hold of Dumbledore now, who looked up into the red eyes of Voldemort, who thrust his wand forward, and a flash of emerald green illuminated the scene. In just an instant, the flames disappeared, and the cavern fell into blackness. It could mean only one thing. Harry and Ron could both hear the cold laughter fill the cavern, and both bleeding from fighting off the Inferi, scrambled through the cave entrance, which had already opened as they fell towards it. The sea breeze hit them like a wall for only an instant before they grabbed hands and disapparated from the spot, landing in a heap at the center of Hogsmeade just a moment later. They could still hear the cold laughing, unsure if it was in their minds or echoing in their ears. The next few days were a blur as a familiar scene unfolded once the news spread about Dumbledore's death. Witches and wizards poured in from all over for the funeral. Harry and Ron vaguely wondered to themselves how the funeral may unfold without a body to bury. They knew the final Horcrux still remained at the school, but they had not been able to muster the energy to look for it, having no idea where to begin. It seemed, however, not to matter, for the time being at least, as even Voldemort wasn't foolish enough to attack the school while so many witches and wizards from around the world were pouring in to attend Dumbledore's funeral. As for the locket, they had quickly tried to destroy it with the sword when they'd arrived back at Hogwarts, certain Voldemort was sure to be on their heels at any moment. But Voldemort had not pursued them, and to their dismay, the sword had failed to destroy the Horcrux because, indeed, the locket was not a Horcrux at all. Harry knew it was no good the moment the sword had made contact. Unlike the cup or the ring, there was no smoke, no scream of agony from the thing inside. Instead, it merely hissed where the basilisk venom had touched it and cracked open, revealing a folded up note. And, of course, it's the note that we all know too well. The note signed with the initials R.A.B. After considering the matter, they reasoned out that whoever R.A.B. was, he must have been very close to Voldemort to discover his secret. Must have been a Death Eater. We could ask Snape, Ron suggested with no real conviction. Harry didn't like the idea of sharing such a big secret with Snape, even if he likely could tell them if there was a Death Eater named R.A.B. Ron's suggestion gave Harry a new idea. Someone he could trust. Someone whose family had also had ties to the Death Eaters. And with that, Sirius looked up from the note and smiled. Guys, just as a quick reminder, we still have tickets available for our upcoming tour in the month of February for Through the Griffin Door. We are going to be going to Charlotte, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, Atlanta, and Nashville. If you want to check it out, link in the description down below. Y'all, sincerely hope that you guys are having as much fun with the series as we are. Be sure to let us know all of your thoughts and comments in the towel section down below. But otherwise, be sure to tune in next week when we finally reach part 10 in What If Ron Wasn't Hufflepuff. If this is in the future at some point in time, you can probably check out that video right over here. But otherwise, until next time, bye!